Hi guys, Mimi G here and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a sew along for one of my latest Simplicity patterns, a unisex blazer 3071. Let's get started. Alright guys, so we're working on my pattern 3071. It's a unisex blazer and it's sized extra small to extra large. On the back of the pattern envelope, you are always going to have some suggested fabric. So for example, cotton blends, you could even make this out of a double knit or denim, linen blends, suiting, all of those would be great for this jacket. I'm going to be making size medium, okay, because I know that my hip is a 40, the small finished hip is a 41, and so I'm obviously going to need more room and I want an oversized fit. So I'm going to select size medium, because I can see that the finished garment measurement is 45. It's a boxy garment, so bust, waist, and hip are all the same measurement, okay? So I'm gonna be cutting again a size medium. Let's go over the pattern pieces you need to cut. Okay, let's start with pattern piece number 3. This is the loop. This little loop is on the back of our jacket. You're gonna cut one. Pattern piece number 6 is our back facing. You're gonna cut one of fabric on the fold, and you're going to cut one of interfacing also on the fold. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 5. This is our front facing. You're cutting 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. You're going to cut pattern piece number 1. This is our front. You're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. Make sure and transfer all of your dots and markings. You're going to cut pattern piece number 7. This is our upper sleeve. You're cutting 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. As you can see, I have already made my adjustment because I needed to shorten my sleeve. The same adjustment is made on the undersleeve. If you are adjusting, I am going to cut pattern piece number 8, undersleeve. I'm going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. We have pattern piece number 4. This is our pocket. You're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. Pattern piece number 9 is our front lining. You're going to cut 2 of just lining. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 10. This is our back lining. You're going to cut 2. And then lastly, you're going to cut out pattern piece number 2. This is our back. You're going to cut 2 of your fabric. Okay, so as you can see, I have all of my lining pieces cut. I also have everything interfaced, including the entire fronts. Okay, so don't forget to do that. Once we have everything cut, we can go ahead and start sewing. Now, before we get started, make sure that you stay stitch along the front of the jacket front. And then you also want to stay stitch the neck on the back pieces. Okay, so before we sew these together, you're going to stay stitch both pieces of your back neck. Okay, starting with the back, we're gonna go ahead and place these right sides facing. I can't really tell what the right side is on my fabric. We're gonna go ahead and pin along the entire center back. Okay, now we're going to head to the sewing machine and we're just going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once we have our center back seam together, I want you to go ahead and press this seam open and flat. Okay, once we've done the back, we're going to go ahead and grab our little loop piece, and all I have done is I have pressed both ends to the middle and then pressed again, and now we're just going to go ahead and edge stitch. All right, so you should have 2 little dots here on the back of your jacket. That's where we're going to be placing our loop. So I'm going to go ahead and place about 3/8 of an inch on the inside of that dot. And I'm going to stitch that down and then I'll do the other side. So let me just pin that in place. Okay, let's head to the sewing machine. Go ahead and cut off any loose threads. I'm going to trim some of this down. And this, just so you know, is optional. I mean, you could skip this little loop if you don't want it on the back of your jacket. Okay, now that we have our loop in, we're going to go ahead and attach our pockets. So still working on the back, you're going to grab your fabric pockets, okay? You're going to align your notch, and we're going to go ahead and pin. You're going to do the same thing on this pocket, so right sides are facing. And we're going to do the other pockets on our front, so go ahead and grab your fronts. And now your lining pockets are going to go on your front, so you're going to line that notch up and pin. Okay, pin your other lining pocket to your front the same way. Okay, now we're going to take our back and both our fronts, and we're just going to stitch our pocket down using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, now we're going to go ahead, now that we have all 4 pockets on, we're going to go ahead and stitch our side seams together. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my pins. Always make sure that you're aligning your notches. Go ahead and pin around your pocket. Okay, so my dots are almost gone, but I can still see them. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at the hem. We're going to work our way up to the first dot. We're going to back stitch, break your thread, right? We're leaving this open. You're going to start here, back stitch all the way up, and then you'll sew around your pocket. You're going to go ahead and pin your other front to back the same way, and then we'll head to the sewing machine. Okay, so I've gone ahead and given this a press. So here's our pocket. Now we're going to go ahead and stitch together our shoulders. So with right sides facing, we're going to go ahead and pin along our shoulders. Okay, let's head to the sewing machine with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're going to stitch across both shoulders. Okay, we can go ahead and set the jacket aside for just a second. You're going to go ahead and grab your sleeve and your undersleeve. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pin our sleeves. So we're going to go ahead and with right sides facing, we're going to pin one side. Okay, I have pinned one side, so we're going to go ahead and pin the other side. Okay, so now that we have them both pinned, you're going to pin your other sleeve the same exact way. Then starting at the hem and working our way up, we're going to stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, guys, so now we're gonna have to go ahead and create 2 rows of stitches here so that we can ease our sleeve in. We're gonna go ahead and do that for both of our sleeves. So let's head to the sewing machine and do that. Okay, so now you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna grab the bobbin threads, and we're just gonna pull both at the same time. And we don't want gathers at the top, right? We don't want any gathers, we don't want any folds or pleats. We just need to pull enough so that we can ease this sleeve onto our armhole. So you're gonna do that to both of your sleeves. Now let's grab our jacket. We're gonna go ahead and pin our sleeve to our jacket. Okay, so you wanna make sure that you're aligning your dots and your notches. You have 2 double notches, so make sure that those are aligned. And you're gonna pin. I can already tell by filming that this probably wasn't the best fabric choice considering it's so dark, but there's no turning back now, you guys, so I'm so sorry. Try and follow along. Okay, we did pretty good. So I think we've eased this in nicely. Okay, you're gonna pin your other sleeve to your other armhole the same way. Now we're gonna head to the sewing machine. We're gonna stitch all the way around using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, now that our sleeves are in, we're gonna go ahead and do our sleeve head. So if you have fleece, I just cut 2 thin layers of this. I think this is just batting that I had from a quilting project. And I cut it 2 inches by 6 inches. We're gonna go ahead and pin it to our sleeve. I've already done one. So with the sleeve still on the inside, you're gonna place your padding so that the middle is along where that seam line is and the bulk of your padding is towards the sleeve. The edge of your jacket and the edge of your batting should be meeting. And we're gonna go ahead and just pin it in place real quick. Okay, now we're gonna head to the sewing machine and we're just gonna stitch this in place. Okay, so the next step is we're gonna go ahead and put in our shoulder pads. So I have my shoulder pads here. These are pretty lightweight. They're not super bulky, but it's all I had. I would actually probably, for the weight of my fabric, because it's not very heavy, I would probably use a little thicker of a shoulder pad, but like I said, this is what I have. So basically you're just gonna place it so that the cupping part is up, right? You don't want it like this. You want it to be up like this because once we turn it over. And you're just gonna basically tack it, hand tack it to the shoulder seam. So I just fold mine sort of in half like this. And I have my needle and thread. I'm not gonna do this whole thing on camera, but just kind of show you how I do it. So I fold my shoulder pad in half. I'm gonna line it up so that it's right at that seam. And I'm just gonna tack it down. Now you should take your time. I'm just doing this kind of quickly for camera. And you could do like a little catch stitch. Also, I don't pull very hard. Like I don't want it to be like super tight. I want some movement in it, but I just want enough that it's not going to come off. Okay, you're going to continue doing this to both of your shoulder pads, to your shoulders. You're going to go ahead and place them right sides facing, okay? And you have some notches, so make sure to pay attention to your notches. We're going to go ahead and pin. Okay, there's a notch. You should also have a dot that was marked both on your facing and on your lining. So I'm going to go ahead and match those up. Your facing should extend the way you see here, okay? So that's not a mistake. Now we do have to ease this little bit of the facing onto the lining. So I'm just going to make just a couple of snips into my facing. Okay, now we're going to go ahead to the sewing machine. We're going to start at our dot because we don't sew this portion. Okay, we're going to start at the dot. We're going to work our way up 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I went ahead and pressed my seam allowance towards my lining. You're going to take your other lining and your other facing. You're going to sew it the same way. All right, now we're going to go ahead and grab our back lining, and we're going to sew our center back seam the way that you did for the jacket. Okay, so no difference there. You're just going to go ahead, pin the center back, and then you're going to stitch it just like we did for the fabric for the jacket using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and create a bit of a pleat here. So you should have a little marking there. I'm going to go ahead and just pin mine. Okay, and you're going to stitch from there to the dot. Okay, we're going to go ahead and pin our back facing. So you also have some notches, so you want to make sure that you align those notches to the notches that are on your back neck. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do my notches first. And then I'm just going to do a couple of clips into my lining. Just it can take a rounder shape, and then I'm going to go ahead and pin. Same on the other side. Okay, now you're going to head to your sewing machine. We're going to stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now go ahead and press your seam allowance down towards your lining. If you want to add your label, you could do so now. Okay, let's go ahead, and going forward, you're going to do the same exact thing that we did for the jacket. So you're going to go ahead, pin your shoulders, you're going to stitch your shoulders, and then you're going to stitch down your side seams. You're going to go ahead and do your sleeve the same exact way that we did for the jacket, and you're going to attach it the same exact way. So nothing is different. You're just going to follow the same instructions that we did when attaching shoulder, side seams, and sleeve to the jacket. All right, guys, so now that you have your lining put together, your sleeves are in, I made one marking here on the facing because the hem of my facing is 1.5 inches, and we're gonna have to pivot here when we stitch our lining to our jacket. And so I like to have a clear indication of where that is. Go ahead and grab your jacket. We're gonna place these right sides facing. Okay, so I'm gonna start at the shoulders. I'm gonna make sure that I'm lining those seam lines up exactly, and I'm gonna pin. Same for the other shoulder. Okay, then go ahead and pin the center back. Now we can work our way down one front. Okay, and I'm gonna pin just once along the bottom here. Okay, you're gonna do the same thing on the other side. All right, so we're gonna start at the center back. We're gonna work our way down one side and across the bottom of the facing. And then you're gonna repeat that same process, starting back at the center back and working your way in the other direction. Okay, so before we stitch the bottom, I find it easier to leave this open while I do my understitching. So you want to go ahead and understitch as far possible as you can. Make sure that you are understitching on your facing side and not accidentally understitching on your jacket facing side, or you know what I'm talking about. Make sure it's on the facing. All right, I've done all of my understitching. Now we're gonna go ahead and close out most of the bottom. We are gonna leave a small opening because we need to finish off the hem of our sleeve. So I'm gonna go ahead and just trim some of this fraying that's happening from my lining. Okay, so I wanna match up my seam lines first always. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin there. Okay, I want to match up that center back seam, even though we are leaving this space open, but I want to go ahead and pin it anyway. Okay, I'm going to leave maybe like a 6, maybe an 8-inch opening. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pin. That way I know that at either side of these, I'm going to leave this area here open. I'm going to go ahead and trim this. I'm going to go ahead and trim into my corner. Okay, you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now we're going to stitch across the bottom, leaving this opening again, right? So you're going to break your stitch, continue on the other side, stitch across. We're using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, with the jacket still wrong side out, we're going to go ahead and turn up the hem 1.5 inches. And you will do some hand stitching, unfortunately. And I'm just going to pin just to help me keep it all in place and make sure that it's even. Okay, you're going to go ahead and measure that 1.5 inches all the way across the bottom and pin in place. You're still going to leave this opening here, so I'm only going to turn up the fabric, not my lining. Okay, once you have it pinned, you're going to go ahead, grab your needle and thread, and you're just going to catch stitch this. So you're going to be grabbing, I don't grab my lining, so as I go, I'm really only grabbing my fabric and literally a hair like a thread of my fabric. So you don't want it going through all layers, right? You literally are just catching a tiny bit. If it's interface, so this part is easy, right? Because you just can sort of catch the interface. But when you get here, you want to make sure that you're only literally catching a thread. You're going to continue this until you get all the way across. Remember that when you get here, make sure not to catch stitch your lining, okay? Just the jacket. All right, so I went ahead and turned my jacket right side out through this opening, right? So you're just gonna stick your hand in there and carefully, very carefully, pull the entire jacket out to the right side. And this is what it should look like on the inside, okay? So once you catch stitch it, you'll be able to see how this sort of folds over really nicely. And I've gone ahead and poked out my corners. Now what we're gonna do is, before we give this all a good press, I'm gonna finish the sleeve. So this is just the way that I like to do it. My sleeve is inside of my jacket, right? So you can see both of them here. And so I'm gonna zoom in for you guys because this could get a little tricky. Okay, so first you wanna make sure that your lining isn't twisted, right? Your seam lines should be matching up on both sides. So you have a seam here and a seam here. So make sure that those are aligned. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna fold in both my lining and my, my sleeve, okay? And then I'm gonna pinch it, and then through this opening, don't let go of this. Through the opening at the bottom, I'm gonna stick my hand all the way inside. And I'm going to grab what I folded under, okay? So I have it on the inside. Don't let go of that. Go ahead and pull it out. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and pin here because I know there's a seam there, so I wanna match up those seams. Okay, and I'm gonna pin. And now we're gonna go ahead and pin the other seam. So right sides are facing. If you need a couple more pins, you can use them. So this is what your sleeve should look like right now. We're gonna head to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch around. Okay, so now that it's sewn, it should look like this. You're just gonna go ahead and pull it back out. Okay, and now your sleeve and your lining are fully sewn together. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and give this a good press all the way around. All right, guys, so now all you have left to do is obviously hand stitch this opening closed. Make your buttonhole and sew on your button. You're doing that on both sides, and you are all done. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure and follow me on Instagram at Mimi G Style, and click your subscribe and notifications so you never miss another sew along. Until next time, peace.